My name is Sue O. I'm the Senior Vice President of Education, Exhibitions, and Community Engagement, and I wanted to invite you here to this wonderful evening, and thank you for spending your Friday night with us. So I'm going to read this because I need my glasses. So welcome to Fright Nights, Unrequited Love with Creature from the Black Lagoon. So this film series is celebrating our classic horror films that were highlighted in the exhibition, Natural History of Horror, and it dissects the scientific discoveries and have stirred fear and inspired creativity in people, all from the past and the present. So before you got into this room, I hope you enjoyed dropping in with our research and collection staff and exhibitions, a little behind the scenes of how things were made, the performance by Captured Oral Fantasy Theater. Did anyone see that? Woo! Okay. Self-help graphics and art workshop, and of course the live studio makeup demo from Boneyard Effects. So that's just the beginning. We have lots more to come. So for this pre-film conversation, we invited a wonderful creative panel of women, so go girl power tonight. Trailblazing in the genre of film, fashion, and literature, and they all love monsters. So moderating the conversation tonight is Claire Dunlap, the co-producer and creator of Midsummer, Scream, Halloween, and Horror Convention. She comes from a theater and film background, worked as an actor and award-winning producer for the LA Weekly Best Musical 2009 for stage performance of Hair with original producer Michael Butler. So Claire will be moderating this evening and taking this journey with us and taking us to meet these two incredibly creative women. Mallory O'Meara, the author of The Lady from the Black Lagoon, because we've got to learn about her. Artist and filmmaker Micheline Pitt. And of course, right after, we'll be seeing the film. And last but not least, for future events, wanted to make sure you come back out on Thursday, March 26th for Monster Fears with Frankenstein, and Friday, April 10th for All Wrapped Up with the Mummy, another film term. So without further ado, and welcome Claire Dunlap. Thank you.
All right. Hello, everybody. Happy Valentine's Day. And just before we start, we made a pact to say that we will do our best not to drop the F-bomb tonight.
I know there's at least one child out there, so we're going to respect that child.
We're going to keep it classy tonight.
So we've got, this is, for those, I'm sure all of you know who these people are, but I'm going to go ahead and give a little intro as well. Mallory O'Meara, who's best-selling and award-winning author of Lady from the Black Lagoon, Hollywood Monsters and the Lost Legacy of Millicent Patrick, as well as she's got another upcoming book called Girly Drinks. She's a film producer, screenwriter, and co-hosts a weekly literary podcast, Reading Glasses, and she loves cats and monsters. Yay!
Thank you for including my cats. That's really important to me.
It's like, I'm glad we're not under any black light because my clothes are covered in cat hair right now. Micheline Pitt is a professional makeup artist, author, and creator of Vixen, which is her own sexy, powerful, retro-style clothing line.
I see a lot of your outfits here tonight. You guys look real cute.
She just produced her first horror film with her husband, R.H. Norman, and it's called Grummy. To quote her from a recent LA Weekly write-up, it's about how monsters saved my life. That's what Grummy is about. And we have Twitter and all that good stuff. I'll tell you guys what it is at the end so you can follow her. So let's get started with Creature from the Black Lagoon, shall we? And so Creature easily segues into the realm of natural history, especially because it centers on an archaeological dig and discovery of this unknown species, aka creature, right? And so I guess my first question for both of you, and you can decide who would like to go first, is what's your background with horror and monsters, and when did you first know you were a monster lover?
You want to kick it off?
I mean, I'll kick it off. So I think, like a lot of us that might be in this room, my like maybe your parents. And for me, it was my grandfather showed me the first horror movie ever when I was like 3 years old. I saw Frankenstein. His favorite was Dracula, so I started with the classics. And I remember seeing Creature from the Black Lagoon. I don't know if you guys remember in the grocery store, they handed out those 3D glasses and it was shown on TV for the first time. So for me, I think it all started with Frankenstein, but I like really fell in love with the classic monster movies when I saw Creature from the Black Lagoon. So that's how my relationship started at a very young age, and my fascination with monsters in film. I kind of skipped the whole 80s slasher thing and I went super old school. So that's how mine started.
Great. Mallory?
For me, I think I was about 4 years old, and my first, it's not really a monster movie, but also my grandfather showed it to me. It was Fantasia. And I was watching it, and I was like, oh, this is cool, you know, animals and tutus, weird brooms, awesome, awesome. And then I got to the Night on Bald Mountain sequence, and it was the very, very first time where art affected me in that way. And it was the very, very first time that I thought about, because you know when you're a kid, you're basically a goldfish, you know, you're just consuming things and you're not really thinking about them. But Chernabog, which is the demon in that sequence, he affected me deeply. And it was the first time I thought about a film after I had seen it and thought, oh, I think this is what art is. I think this is what art does. And I fell in love with monsters and their ability to do that.
That's great.
Let's hear it for Chernabog.
Don't you have him tattooed on you?
Yes, that is my neck tattoo, making me extremely unemployable. So thank you all for buying my book, because I can not do anything else.
Fantastic. So in regards to Creature then, is Creature one of both of your favorite classic monsters? I know you said Frankenstein was the first, but how, you know, and assuming that it is like, how did your love of Creature, like what sparked that?
I mean, for me, mine started with Frankenstein because that's how I understood prosthetics and special effects makeup as a little girl. I never thought the monsters were scary. I was like, thought they were kind of sad, you know? Like I felt bad for them that like they seemed like they always wanted to find love. Like if you really watch the old movies, they're really like love stories. It's like the gothic Bridget Jones' Diary, but like with better makeup. And
I am so in for this.
And, you know, when you watch The Creature, I mean, let's be honest, in the period of filmmaking, no one had ever pulled off a makeup like that or a monster suit like that that moved like that under the water. I mean, they had two different suits. So for me, when I really understood the magic of movies and makeup, that later became my favorite. So Frankenstein unfortunately got shoved aside and The Creature took the #1 spot for me, just from the sheer creativity of the character and the detail.
I was a teenager when I got into the Universal monster movies because I am the weirdo in my family and I didn't have anyone to show me them, but I realized by that point when I was a teenager that I was a monster nerd. I just had to lean into it, and I was like, okay, cool, I need to start with all the classics. And I was, was going through them: Dracula, Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Wolfman, and I watched Creature from the Black Lagoon, and I fell in love because as a teenager, that's how I felt. I did not feel like Julie Adams. I did not feel long-legged and sexy. I was covered in zits and
Same.
extremely awkward. And I related to him so much when I don't know if has anyone not seen Creature from the Black Lagoon? All right, I will not spoil it for those 5 people.
I think there's more than 5, but
But he was the character that I really related to. And just like you said, I didn't see them as scary. I saw them as empathetic, and Creature especially. I was like, oh man, you're awkward and clammy too? That's how I am in the halls every day in school. Like that's where I saw myself reflected. It wasn't in all the other characters.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So what is it that you would say, now you had mentioned prosthetics with Frankenstein and then on to Creature. What would you say that, what about Creature inspires your creativity today, if it still does?
well, I think that we wouldn't have the movies we have now without Jack Pierce and Lon Chaney's amazing work. But at the time that Creature was done, like one of my favorite sculptors, Chris Chris Mueller Jr. sculpted a lot of the creature that you're going to see on screen, the final version. And he was one of the main sculptors actually at Disney. He sculpted most of the rides there, and he sculpted on the Jungle Cruise, Haunted Mansion, the Flying Dumbo ride. And there were so many amazing artists that worked on just like one character for a film that like touched so many lives. So like as an artist and someone that makes things for a living, like I hope whatever I make can like inspire someone to want to make things that'll continue touching lives and inspiring people and make people feel creative and invigorate them in some way. So I just try to like take the things that make me feel that way, put it into my work, and then hope that that continues that cycle.
Mm-hmm. For me, if you don't know what my book is, I wrote the biography of the woman who designed him, a woman named Millicent Patrick. And Millicent designed Creature at a really interesting time in Universal and film history, because this was really when we went from being afraid of European monsters and more like supernatural, spooky things to being afraid of space and being afraid of science. So there was this big rush to get into science fiction. And Millicent, when she was designing Creature, she knew that. She knew that she couldn't just completely make something up. She really had to infuse this design with as much real science and natural history as she could. And as a nonfiction author who is not allowed to make anything up, that really inspires me that she was able to be so creative while also so inspired by facts and real life and things that were going. And that is what I strive to do as an author, is to make something as educational but also really entertaining and sustainable and long-lasting and fun as I possibly can. So I still, even though I'm done writing this book, clearly, I still keep a picture, many framed photos of her in my office area. And if I ever stray, she's like, Mallory, hey, can't make that up.
That's great. She's gonna come down on you.
Yeah.
They're fabulous outfits.
Sweeping in, yeah.
And
If you guys haven't seen Mallory's book, there's amazing photos of Millicent in there, and she has like the most impeccable fashion sense.
She's
really
incredible.
Amazing.
Clearly we're biased, but
And there's a couple up here that we'll show.
Oh,
too,
awesome.
So, yeah. So speaking of Millicent, you had mentioned in your book Millicent's influence on you
Yes.
as an artist. And,
yes.
Micheline, do you find that Millicent also had an influence on your artistic endeavors, or?
Oh yeah, I mean, before Mallory's book came out, there was like a little underground gang of us that all knew Millicent's story. And
And you were the first one that I knew that was also trying to bring awareness to her.
yes, I would consistently do like Instagram posts and like things, and I'd have to combat fans that were arguing with me and saying that Bud Westmore designed it, and I'm like, no, he didn't. Here's my own personal photos.
It was us in the trenches together.
I know, in the trenches. And then, like, because you guys have to understand that there's all these photos of people working in the workshop that have never been released online, that are in private collections, that are in the studio's collections. And if you're a rabid fan, like, you find a way to get access to this stuff, and you guys are all in forums. I'm in a forum that's called the Universal
What we're
Monster
trying to say
Army.
is that we're huge nerds.
We're
Yeah,
huge
but
nerds.
That's what's
and
happening
and that's,
over here.
I mean, like, that's where this all came out. And so for me, like, Millicent and Mary Blair were like the two biggest influences for me, because I've always worked in very male-dominated industries where there's very little women. Unfortunately, you guys might not know this, but fashion is very male-dominated. There's not a lot of women in it. And so see these two women that got to be on the forefront. Unfortunately, Millicent didn't get the same fabulous story as Mary Blair did, but to know that it's possible to break that glass ceiling in some way at that stage for those women makes you kind of keep pushing forward.
And Mallory, for those who might not know, why don't you give us a little bit of background of Millicent and what she actually did?
What she did?
Yeah, what she actually did with designing the creature.
I mean, you
Yeah.
want me to like?
Wait.
Yeah, just give a little.
Do we
yeah.
want to show the before
Yeah,
photos?
should we get into
okay,
it?
yeah,
Well, so what happened was, just with a lot, and this still happens today, which is really, really fascinating. It happened on a film that I worked on, which was a very ridiculous moment, but with a lot of special effects. Yeah, I know. I will
so
tell you the
just so
story.
you guys know,
Just so
want
you
Mallory to
see-
see this behind
yeah.
her. This is what we're showing.
Oh, I can.
This
The fact that they were laughing told me exactly what photo was behind me. So what happens with a lot of special effects is it's kind of this weird in-between place on a film set where some people think it's a prop, some people think it's a makeup, so it occupies this weird sort of gray area. So at first, they are like, cool, we need a creature suit. Let's have the prop dudes do it, that's fine. And so they made Sweatin' to the Oldies Guppy behind me.
And you can see her face where she's like smiling through this, like, oh my God, I have to be in the movie with this thing. This is gonna be terrible.
Yeah, so Jack Arnold, who produced this film, his goal was to have sort of a Beauty and the Beast sort of situation. He really wanted a creature that you could empathize with and that looked kind of sad. And they got the sad part right, but they didn't get the rest of it. And it just is totally ridiculous. And they did a test with it, and like, surprise,
There's
surprise.
the maquette. Oh,
it
can we go
looks
back to last
bad. It just,
Oh, wait, sorry.
It's going too fast. Can we go back? Back. Wrong way. Whoop.
Technical difficulties.
Whoop. We broke it.
and that's it, we're done, great.
Sorry, she'll go fix it.
We're gonna fix that in a minute.
Sorry.
So
But-
let's
so what
talking about the salamander outfit.
Yeah,
That's what I like to
so
call
that
it. Who designed
clearly
that?
Didn't work out, and so now they were crunched for time, crunched for budget. What a surprise on a film! And they thought, okay, well now we have to give it to the makeup team then. And that's where Millicent Patrick came in. She was a designer over there. She had done a lot of makeup, like regular old makeup designs for them, but she had done Universal's very first science fiction film, which was It Came from Outer Space. And she designed the monster for that. So the team there thought, okay, cool, well, let's have her do this next monster. And she crushed it.
She also did the Metalloid Mutant,
Yes.
which is amazing
also
monster.
uncredited for that.
Also uncredited.
So this is her.
Oh,
This is our girl. This is hard to talk and look behind me at the same time. So, but she transformed it into this, which is something that was a full suit, completely detailed, actually looks like something, like when audiences saw that, remember, there was no internet at the time. The idea that there was a creature that looked this realistic and this detailed living in the Amazon wasn't that far-fetched. And that's part of the power of it. And even today, when we know that, very sadly, the creature from the Black Lagoon is not swimming around in the Amazon, there's a suspension of disbelief there. A lot of people think that it's like a fully articulated makeup, but it's just a mask.
it is.
But it's Millicent's design work that really did all of that.
It's
And
so odd. Can we
big
go?
impro-
are we
big
able to go-
improvement, as
Were
I'm
we
sure
able
you
to
can
go
tell.
back to the maquettes though? Can we go back a couple of photos? I don't know if it does it go backwards?
You trust me with that?
Yeah, let's try it. I do. Let's back one more. Oh, look how unhappy that smile is still.
She's like, who
oh
is
my
this?
God.
That's the smile of that like one guy at the party you really don't want to talk to. And
And he asked for your phone
she's like,
number.
please get me out of this conversation.
Can we go back one more? You guys can see the maquette that they did for it, and like the pool for the mask is just one picture back. That was going to be the creature. And you can see another creature test there, early maquette as well. So poor Chris Mueller had to sculpt this thing and try to make that believable. And somehow they made it worse.
You know those like total full body spandex suits that people wear on Halloween?
Yeah.
That's what it reminds me of.
I can't say what it reminds me of because there might be kids in the room, but it's real bad.
I know exactly what you're talking about, my friend. But yeah, so Millicent completely improved on the design, and so this was a really special Universal monster. This was the first one that had really been seen in daylight. This was the first one to go underwater. Creature was a really landmark creation for Universal
Life
Studios.
magazine did a full color photo shoot for this movie.
Glamour shots.
Super glamour shots. And because the movie they had to choose was going to originally be in color.
Yeah.
And they were like, whoa, 3D, but you can only do black and white.
Yeah.
So imagine if we got to see this movie in color,
Ugh.
like Technicolor.
Ugh, yeah, what a dream.
That'd be pretty awesome. Sorry, we're nerding out
Again, we're nerding out. This is what we do.
That's why you guys are great. So speaking of like what happened with Millicent, how she was sort of swept under the rug, and of course a male-dominated industry at the time, and as we know now. But I absolutely love the title of your book, you know, Lady from the Black Lagoon, Hollywood Monsters and the Lost Legacy. Now, is this a play on words the way I'm thinking it is? Or
Oh,
is
yeah.
it, okay, good.
Do I
'Cause
look
I'm
like a
am I
subtle
reading
person
into
to you?
that? 'Cause I love it, yeah. Because it is. It's like, you know, the egomaniacal men in Hollywood being the true monsters, right?
Yes.
And like what they did to her. It's great. And then moving on to sort of the science element of art, did either one of you like science when you were in school? Was that ever something that, did you ever see how these things intersect, or?
I mean, I was the kid that like took an F because I wouldn't dissect the frog.
Hell
I
yeah.
mean, I just didn't want to do it. I was like, I can look this up in a book. Like, here's a fully articulated book that shows me what the inside of this frog looks like. I don't want to cut it open because I just kind of associated it too much to like the creature and like other things. I was an English kid and a history kid more than I was a science kid. I think science is really cool. Yeah, they're English and history nerds. Being dyslexic
Clearly
and being...
a very nerdy audience happening here.
But imagine being the dyslexic kid that likes English. That was rough. And but science was cool, and I think that if I got to come to a museum like this, I would love science even more as a child. But like when you grow up in like middle of nowhere Georgia, like we don't get a lot of fancy things. But I think I love dinosaurs. I wanted to be an archaeologist when I was a kid because I was obsessed with Howard Carter's book that he did when he unearthed King Tut's tomb. I got that as a little girl as a gift from my grandmother. So like that started my fascination with that, but that falls more into history. I mean, you kind of fall out of science. So I think I always kind of kept gearing towards the history of things, except when it involves dinosaurs.
It's like the science of, natural history. So
Exactly.
That's great. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, I actually went to college for animal science and zoology, which you can tell I use a lot. Money well spent. I love animals and anything, and I loved science. I loved everything except for math because I'm just a huge nerd. But science specifically was very, very fascinating to me. And I think that's what's really cool about the creature is because he's so well made, he invites that scrutiny. And it really, as someone who is fascinated with animals and science, when I saw it for the first time, it really makes you consider him and think about it and think, wow, this could be real.
Yeah. It's interesting because they at the beginning when they show, they find the claw in that, and it's funny. I was like, I was watching the
Spoilers, by the way.
Yeah,
A claw
sorry.
is found.
It's at the very beginning. But I felt like I was cramming for a test. I'm watching the movie this afternoon with the commentary. And there was a thing when I first saw the film, I noticed that they used peacocks as noise when they're in the Brazilian, wherever they are, the forest. And you hear this noise in the background. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's peacocks. And a lot of people haven't heard what those are. I grew up in Palos Verdes, and so they're like pigeons there.
You're like, I
And so
know
you're-
what this is.
I'm like, it's a peacock. And then later, when they're on the boat, that is actually shot off of Portuguese Bend, which is where, so I was wondering if those two, and that's actually a really huge archaeological, geological place, fossils, and I mean, it's crazy for all of those things.
Most of the water scenes in this are shot in Florida.
Yeah,
And
the
swamp.
underwater one, yeah.
And you can still go there to this day and see those swamps.
I did an event last year in Wakulla Springs, and to them, he's like their hometown hero, Creature is. They talk about him like he's like a baseball star that did really well. It's really adorable.
Yeah.
They don't have a lot to do there. I mean, it's alligators, and then there's Creature from the Black Lagoon, and then they have Disney World.
Yeah, you could tell it was filmed in the Florida.
My husband's from Florida, sorry guys.
Yeah, so, and then, so you did mention a little bit of this, but you said that Mallory, you said that Millicent did get into specific like science for researching how to create the monster.
Yeah,
or the
so
creature.
they talk about in the film that this particular creature that they're looking for is from the Devonian age. So Millicent, that's a real age, and so what Millicent did was she went and researched fossils of reptiles and fish from that period and looked at how they would have moved and how were they shaped and how they would have looked. And that's part of the reason why it looks so good is because it actually does have a basis in science and natural history.
Great. And then, okay, and Micheline, you have two of your pieces here.
I do have two of my pieces. Yeah. Did all of you guys get to walk through the exhibit, The Natural History of Horror? Sweet. Did you guys like it? Did you wish it was bigger? Yes. Hear that, museum? Yeah, so the both creature pieces in this exhibit come from my personal collection. The full-size 1-to-1 scale, which means it's full scale to what was in the film, was done by a sculptor named Mark Elfrey. He only made like 20-something of them, and it's taken me about 7 years to find another one. So that was definitely like a big venture to own that, because like you guys saw it. It's so neat. You want to just go up and touch it? Like, it's so cool. And then the mask is actually a pull from the original mold from this film. There's only 3 of them left in the entire world. They're all in private collections. One is in my friend Steve Wang's collection, who did the creature from Monster Squad, Predator, and Gremlins too. He did the big spider gremlin. He's awesome. You guys should look him up. And then a private collector that's in Philadelphia. So from what I understand, that came from Bob Burns' sort of estate. Something happened to the mold. It got destroyed in '62. So that's the closest you will see to the land creature's mask, because there's 2 masks. There's an underwater creature mask and a land creature, and the underwater has got more like buggy eyes, so they could put lenses for protection for the actor that was wearing that. So the design looks a little bit different.
That's terrific. Okay, so I was given our wrap-up signal. I did want to ask one final question for each of you, which is, for any young woman, or older woman for that matter, who is looking to express themselves creatively, whether it be through makeup or writing or film producing, what would your words of wisdom be to them?
I think the first thing, a hump that a lot of us need to get over, is to remember that you belong here. Millicent Patrick is really important to me because she showed me that I belong in the world of horror. You know, I am a monster fan, I'm a metalhead, a lot of the things that I love are male-dominated, and I really struggle to see myself there, so I think there's a lot of internalized imposter syndrome, you know, and when you don't see people who look like you doing the things that you dream of doing, you don't think that it's possible. And Millicent changed that for me. That was the very first moment in my life where I thought, wow, that's a thing that girls can do? And yes, everything is a thing that girls can do, and you absolutely belong here, and the world really, really needs your stories. You know, if you're sitting there and you're writing, or you're drawing, or you're thinking about a film that you want to make, and you're like, oh, this is going to be stupid. No, it's not stupid, because it's going to matter to somebody out there. When I was writing this book, I thought that like 50 girls who like Creature from the Black Lagoon were gonna read it, and honestly, that was enough for me. Because if it meant something to just one other person, if it just meant something to you, it was worth writing this book. And so just do it. If you need to like drink a beer beforehand, do it. But I promise you, you belong here, and the world really, really is waiting to see the art that you make.
Woo! I think that deserves a round of applause. I couldn't agree with everything you say more, because I'm in the same boat. Like, we're such kindred spirits. Sometimes I'm like, are we separated at birth? I've always worked in male-dominated industries. Everything from animation. When I worked in animation over 14 years ago, it was almost all men. And when I worked in special effects 13 years ago in shops, it was almost all men. And, you know, I've found myself falling into different careers because sometimes I get bored, other times because I've gotten pushed out by men. And now, as an adult woman, I've made a choice to keep fighting for everything that I want and what I want to do, no matter what gets in my way, no matter what someone thinks of me. Will say whatever I want and do whatever I want, so long as I'm not hurting anyone else in the process. And I can tell you guys the same thing. So long as you're not hurting someone else in the process, do whatever feels right to you. Don't follow anyone else's rules. You know, if someone gets their feelings hurt because you're successful, that's on them and not you. You should be proud of every success, everything that you have in your life. We all fail. I have been homeless like 3 times while living out here. I've had to start my life over again more times than I'd like to count. And I can tell you, as a business owner and as someone that continues to follow their dreams, everyone has a different path, and find yours and just go for it.
Also, I want to add that I dropped out of high school and college. So if you are feeling like you are not educated enough to do the things that you want to do, Don't worry about it.
I didn't-
Everyone's just making it all up. That's what they don't tell you.
I didn't go to
No
college.
one knows what they're doing.
I got 0 college education.
It's all just a facade. You're fine. Just start doing stuff.
That's wonderful. Well, I want to thank you ladies so very much. You're both really inspirational, really fantastic. And if you want to, let's see, for Mallory, you can follow her on Twitter at Mallory O'Meara or visit her website, MalloryO'Meara.com. I hope I'm pronouncing that properly. And MichelinePitt.com, or follow her on Instagram at Micheline Pitt.
Yeah, if you are seeing really cool creature clothes or purses here tonight and you're like, oh, that's so cool, she designed them, and you should buy them because they're amazing.
We have a store in Burbank if you guys would like to come visit us. And we make boys' clothes. Just saying, there's a lot of fellas
There
here
you go,
tonight.
yeah. Anything else? I think that's it. All right.
Thanks,
Thank you
guys.
guys so much. Thank you guys for coming. Enjoy the movie.